Hey, what's up guys? This is Jeff with Gamestork, and let's talk a little bit about third-party developers and whether or not it's fair that we're not getting Switch versions of their games.
Gamestork delivery initiated.
So Switch owners find themselves in a position right now where all the new games that are being released, all the games that we saw at E3, many of these games we do not see Nintendo Switch versions of. Dragon Ball FighterZ is a great example of a game that can easily be ported over. However, we don't see the port. Now they have given us options of, whether or not to reach out, sign a petition, whatever you've done for that. Tag them on Twitter or whatever to be able to get these ports to show interest. But is it really fair of them not to go ahead and port their game to the Nintendo Switch? And is it fair for us as the consumer to be angry at these companies and to be outraged that here in 2017, 4 months out from the launch of the Nintendo Switch, that we're not getting them? Well, in order to really establish this, we have to look back and realize that the Nintendo Switch had a very quick turnaround and release from the time that it was announced. Nintendo was very secretive about this console because they understood the value of the concept. They knew that people like Sony, who's copied them in the past, would undoubtedly copy them again, and probably copy them as quickly as possible, as they knew that this would be a huge success. So what they did is they kept the console a secret, aside from a few certain developers, which began developing early. Now these big third-party developers, they didn't get their dev kits until much later, which was right before the release of the Nintendo Switch, and as such, they didn't have time to port games that they have been developing already for years over to the Switch. A lot of them actually just said, we're not even worried about that right now because we're so busy trying to get this out for what we've already been developing for. And the thing about it is, us as consumers, we're kind of mad about that. We're like, okay, so this is really unfair. But the fact is, I have a few points here I'm going to go through, but the first one is that these companies haven't had a lot of time in order to port their games over to the Nintendo Switch. And a lot of companies are just now getting, right after the release, getting their dev kits in order to work on these games. So this is why we see, there were 20 plus games announced that were being developed in the Unreal Engine 4, which are all third party. There were no shows at E3. Why? Because they're really early in development. These games have just started the development cycle, and we're probably not going to hear anything from them until next year, which to me, it's saddening not to see the third party, but considering how quickly Nintendo put out their console and that they did it very secretively without sending out many dev kits, this leads me to just kind of give third parties a little bit of a break in that area. Now, also, Nintendo warned the consumer. Nintendo said, look, guys, because of what the Wii U did, because of the poor sales, the 13 million, roughly, sales of the entire life of this console, third parties don't trust us anymore. They are afraid that their ports aren't going to make money, and let's get down to it. There are a lot of people who develop games who love gaming and they love that stuff, but the heads of these companies are businessmen who want to make money, and they do what makes them money. Right? They're bigwigs who want money. They want those Benjamins in their pocket. So what do? They do whatever it takes to make money. And if a Nintendo console in the past has made them lose money as businessmen, then you can bet that the men at the top of these companies are going to say, let's wait and see. We don't want to lose money again. Now, this being the case, which we talked about before as we call the wait and see approach, has taken hold. People who did get dev kits did not start porting their games early because they were afraid of a low install base on the Wii U, and as such they did not want to lose money in the process of porting over these games and spending time and resources and paying people to do it. Now what's great about this is Nintendo's come out, they support Unreal 4 engine, they support all these other engines that most of these third parties use, making it extremely easy to get their games over. And Nintendo told us right out of the gate that in 2017, which is this year, by the way, if you have forgotten, that they would drive the sales up with their first-party games. That was their plan all along. They wanted to have a huge first year, which it looks like right now is projected to be about 18 million in sales on consoles with an average of a 1.6 attach rate That's 1.6 attach rate on games, which is phenomenal. At the launch of the Wii, it was roughly 1.4. I believe I'm remembering that right. And that doesn't even count all the digital sales. Like, this is just a rough estimate based off physical sales of games, and that's unheard of for a system. The Switch is extremely successful so far. It's selling as fast as they can make it, and let's just hope that they can ramp up production before Christmas, before Mario Odyssey in October, to match the needs in that season, to meet that 18 million goal. Now, third parties right now are doing something and reaching out, even though I've seen in comments people saying, well, I don't like begging for ports. I feel you, it stinks sometimes. But the fact is, they need proof that the consumer, which is the Nintendo fan at this point, the Nintendo Switch owner, is really interested in purchasing their game. Games like Dragon Ball FighterZ, for instance, they need to know. They are porting Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 over to the Nintendo Switch, but they're still at this point uncertain about how that port is going to do when it releases. So that in itself is a gamble. So why would the same company come out with another gamble on the system without knowing they're going to make money? This, in my eyes, makes us just need to back up, take a breath, and realize that third-party companies, their their wait-and-see approach might not be so bad. Number one, for them. Number two, for the industry. I'd hate to see somebody quickly port a game over to the Nintendo Switch only to not get the support that they need, lose money, lose faith in Nintendo again, and then just go through the same thing all over again and not port any future games. So it's not necessarily a bad idea to wait a little bit until the install base grows, so there's a wider set of consumers who like first-person shooters, who like adventure games, who like one-on-one fighters, who, a wide array of gamers, so that they can sell their stuff to more people on this console. So looking at that, I have to just think to myself, maybe we shouldn't give the third party such a bad deal, and a bad deal. Maybe we shouldn't give them such a hard time, is what I'm saying, because ultimately they're about money, and you know what? As creative and all as they want to be, if money leaves, there's no more developer. You're right. There's no more team. There's no more company. And so we have to realize this as consumer, that they need to be successful when they port these things to the Nintendo Switch. And it's actually really lucky, we're very lucky as consumers, that we live in an age where we can contact, where we can get on Twitter and post and retweet these things to hit up these companies in order to get games and get them interested in making games like Dragon Ball FighterZ. I know I'm talking about that one a lot, but this really applies to all games across the board. But if you look at games, for instance, like Call of Duty World at War II, they might not see it as viable right now in order to port this to the Switch, because they didn't do very well on the last game, and they're trying to prove themselves again. They're trying to go back to the roots, reset the franchise, and it might be just a little bit too big of a gamble. However, I will say this about third parties. In 2018, E3 comes, we are going to see a ton of games, and we're talking about like the 2016 PlayStation conference style, number of games. Because after that 1 year cycle, we're going to see a lot of those third parties start coming out of the woodworks. We're going to see the 20 plus games in development on Unreal Engine 4 from third parties. We're going to see, Square Enix come out in big ways. We're going to see Level 5 come out in big ways. We're going to see a lot of stuff. From Software will finally tell us about what they're doing. And all these companies who've actively said, yes, we're working on Nintendo Switch titles that come out of the woodworks, and people can quit freaking out, having breakdowns and things like that. And let's face it, right now, early in the year, I can say, honestly, I've never been this oversaturated with games. There are too many games right now, and I'm struggling trying to get through them. Like, I'm just now getting to play through Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm still not done. I literally had to take a break after getting 60 hours in to Persona 5, and I'm back cataloged all the way from Tales of Berseria to Dishonored 2. Even though I did a Let's Play on that, I don't have time to jump back in and to finish these games. So these developers taking their time to get these on the console while Nintendo finishes strong with first party this year, I don't mind. Not to mention Nindies. Man, I have never been so into indie games. It's just not even funny. I love it. I love playing these things on the go. I look forward to every one of them, and there's some really good quality games coming this year. So we do have third-party support. There's a lot of it out there, and there are a lot of games coming this year from third parties, and it's a very solid start. But as far as the big Western AAAs, for them to be added, and then things like Monster Hunter to be localized and stuff like that, you know, I think this is going to take probably about mid-year next year. We'll just say a year from now, maybe June, right at E3. This is when all the stuff's going to come out. Nintendo Switch is going to just boom again because of all the third-party support and sales and things like that. And, you know, we'll be having a much different conversation. So, looking at this, I think that as a consumer, we do not need to be angry at all. We don't need to be angry at Nintendo. We don't need to be angry at third parties about their approach because, let's face it, they have to make money. And we don't need to be angry simply because Nintendo's putting out some extremely good quality stuff. They've increased their production teams in their first-party studios, which means more games more often. And if you look at the lineup this year, and you look at, you know, Xenoblade 2, and you look at Mario Odyssey, and you look at Fire Emblem Heroes, and you just look across the board at all the games coming out, from Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 port to, I mean, really, you know, there's just a ton of stuff coming. And you say, well, I'm just angry about this because it's one specific game that I already have on another console is not ported. You know, maybe that GTA 5 port will come next year, or maybe this other port will come next year. I almost said Mass Effect Andromeda, but I don't think anybody wants that at this point. Anyway, it's not a good video unless you're tearing down Mass Effect Andromeda. But yeah, anyway, so that's going to do it for this discussion. I just want to get on here and discuss this and kind of encourage everyone who's freaking out or really kind of angry at developers. No need, you know, don't get angry. Just be patient, play what you got, enjoy the Nintendo Switch, enjoy these first parties as they come, really soak them in. This will give us an opportunity to really dig into indie games and see what they're all about. And there's some really good ones on the horizon for the Nintendo Switch. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys. Be sure to like and subscribe below if you haven't already. You want to hear more about the Nintendo Switch. You want to hear more great discussions, great playthroughs, up-to-the-minute news, as you know, Nintendo news specifically when this stuff comes out. Be sure to just subscribe right there below. I'd love to have you as part of the community, and you'll be more than welcome here. Sound off in the comments below. Let me know how you feel about this, and we'll see you next time.
Gamestork, delivering news, reviews, and playthroughs like a newborn baby.